So the first thing we're going to do is configure the SQL database. Now there's one change we actually have to make related to SQL Server and the Service Manager Data Warehouse. And essentially I'm running SQL Server 2008 R2. So we need to actually go and navigate to, on our server, the program files, Microsoft SQL Server, the reporting services folder, report server bin, and then on the service manager prerequisites there's this enterprise management application extension. So what we want to do is take this file and just copy it into that bin folder. So we've copied that over. And this is actually all documented, and it's actually going to prompt you when you go to install the Service Manager data warehouse, but I'm just doing it in advance. But it will actually refer you to this TechNet article, and essentially we're just going to walk through that now just to make sure we're up and ready. So it talks us through how we're actually copying over that Enterprise Management Reporting Code DLL, and then we need to add this code segment in. So again, going back to our folder in the reporting server, we're going to open the ISS policy config file. I'm actually just going to use Notepad for now, highly advanced. So I'm going to copy that, drag that into Notepad. And then, as he talked about, we're actually going to look for the URL membership condition. So if I'm just going to search for code group, I'm just going to search. Okay. So we have this code group right here. And we can just check it matches what it talks about. So I'm just going to scroll down. And we're going to basically add in a new one. Then we can save that. Ideally we tidy up the formatting, but for now it doesn't really matter. The other thing while we're in here, while we're on the SQL Server, we also just want to make SQL Reporting Services is actually set up. So we would launch the Reporting Services Configuration Manager. There's really three main parts here we want to check. And I've already set this one up. But we're going to be going to the web service URL to check what that URL is. We can accept the defaults and you'll just click apply. For the database, we're actually going and creating a new database, and again we accept the defaults. Unless we already set this up during the install of SQL Server, and again we'll click apply. And then for the reporting manager URL, again accept the defaults and click apply. So we just need to go through and set up those basic things. Next thing we actually need to do is actually create some Active Directory accounts. So I'm going to jump over to my domain controller. and we just want to create 4 accounts for Service Manager, 3 user accounts and 1 group. So we create a new user, and the first one is for the Service Manager services to actually run as. So for example, this might be service service give it a password, don't want it to change, and this account we're actually going to make a local administrator on the Service Manager servers. And then we need 2 more accounts, and one of them is actually used for workflow and the other one is used for reporting, and these are just normal AD users accounts with no additional permissions. So and one more for the reporting. And you can call these whatever you want, obviously. This is just what I'm using in this environment. And now what we're going to do is create a group that will actually be the Service Manager administrators. It's a new group. We'll call it Service Manager Admins. And actually I'm going to add into this the account I'm going to run the install as. So I'm actually going to run it as the domain administrator. So I'm going to make him a Service Manager Admin. And in fact, I'm going to make myself one as well. We're now going to jump over to the Service Manager box. And there's actually a few prerequisites we need to do here. So remember, the first thing we need to do is actually add that Service Manager account as a local administrator. So I'm going to go to Groups Administrators and add in the Service Manager service account. There's also a hotfix we need to install as part of the Service Manager around authorization management. And this is actually described as part of KB 975332. And what that is, it's you go to that, you download hotfix 975332, you request it from Microsoft, they'll actually send it to you. It's not just available for normal download, you request it, it's automated, you get it in about 5 minutes, and then you extract it out, which is what I've got here. This is what you'll get from Microsoft. We run it and then we'll install this update. There's the update. Let's keep that. No. Okay, so I don't need it on mine. I mean, I've already got Service Pack 1 and other things installed on this. But if you weren't, you just want to double check if you need this update or not. Otherwise, Service Manager won't actually function. So the next thing we do, so I'm going to install the Service Manager Management Server first. There's also going to be a reporting add-in that Service Manager is actually going to prompt for as part of the prerequisites checks, but for that I'll actually leave for the second. So we need to get the particular roles and features enabled on this operating system instance. So actually we'll do the features first. So I need to make sure I have the .NET framework installed. So I'm going to enable .NET. Now I do actually have to do some IIS configuration as well. And for the web server, I actually need the ASP.NET enabled as well. I need the basic authentication. I need Windows authentication. I need the II6 Metabase compatibility and WMI compatibility. So all that is needed for Service Manager. Next, install. So we'll let that go. Once the prereqs are all done, we're now actually in a good place. We can go ahead and actually launch the installation. So I'm going to insert the media. Again, I'm just going to do this actually through Hyper-V. So it's a virtual machine. I'm installing the Service Pack 1, the Service Manager. Jump back over, we have a CD drive, 64-bit, and run setup. So you want to install a Service Manager management server. This has to be a separate server. The data warehouse has to be a separate OS instance. It can be a virtual machine, but it cannot be installed on the same instance as the management server. We can install the web portals on the management server, and we're going to do that afterwards. So it's going to find that we're missing the report viewer. We can actually install that directly from here. So again, because we're SP1, this hasn't really been updated for that. It's giving us this warning, but you saw me, I tried to install it, it said it wasn't required for this. So this is actually looking for the hotfix, but if you have SP1 installed, you can progress without this. It's advising 4 gig of memory, I only have 2, but I'm actually going to use dynamic memory, so if it needs more memory, it will be added to this virtual machine as it's actually required. If I actually I've not enabled it yet. Once I finish the installation, I'll actually go in like my other servers and I'll just enable dynamic memory. So we carry on. We specify that SQL server. Use the default instance. Okay, so this is one of the features that we need to make sure is installed. So I actually need to go back to that server. So I'm going to jump back to SQL Box and install that full text search component. So let's jump over to there. So I'm going to go to the Installation Center, Installation, Add Features. Again, I need to insert the media, so I'm going to jump to Hyper-V to do that. So I just want to add features to an existing instance. And the key features you have to have is the database engine services, which I had, but I need this full text search. The other things we want is the management tools, basic and complete, and we want the reporting services, which I've already got. So I just needed this piece added. Then we can go through complete the installation, and then we'll jump back to Service Manager. When you actually, if you are doing a fresh installation of SQL just for Service Manager, there are a few things you want to do. If you're going to have multiple languages supported, you do want to change the collation to Latin 1, General 100, which is not the default, and make sure you enable accent sensitive. That's really the only major change you need to make for multilingual Service Manager installations. If it's just one language, you don't need to worry about it. But if you're using multiple languages, you do need to make that collation change to Latin 1 _ General 100. So that is complete, and then we can carry on with the installation. So this is that warning I told you about earlier. This is fine if you're only using one language, but in a multilingual environment you would want to change that. But since we're using one language, I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to create a new database. We'll probably want to customize our data file and log file location on a production installation. This is just my lab, it's not such a big deal. Set the appropriate size. Management group, again, you really put anything you want. I'm just going to put there. The group, so remember, this is that group we created. So this is saying who are going to be the administrators for your installation. So this is going to be the services account it's going to run as. So again, that's one of those accounts we created. The workflow account. Not right now. Sure. Give a summary of the installation and go. One thing I should point out, I'm actually a SQL administrator as well, so the account I'm logged on as can create the SQL databases. If you wasn't logged on as a SQL admin, you'd need to actually give whatever account you're logged on as permissions to create the database on SQL, or go ahead and create it in advance. So I should have pointed that out. This installation is nearly complete. We'll just let this finish. Last thing it does is install the management packs, and if you're not aware, Service Manager is actually built on top of SCOM, and so a lot of the functionality when we create custom functionality, it's all around creating management packs and importing them into Service Manager to actually add in that functionality. So now just going through and importing those standard management packs to give it its out-of-box experience. So once the installation is actually completed, we do want to run this encryption backup, because again, if there was some sort of disaster, this is what's used to do a lot of the encryption of sensitive information. So we actually want to do this, run this wizard. And I actually posted a FAQ on ntfaq.com that if you don't run this, you can manually run this wizard. So I'm just going to back up the encryption key and give it a password. protect that key. And obviously you want to keep this safe and keep it somewhere secure so you don't lose it. So obviously me saving it in a temp folder is not ideal. So we now have our Service Manager installation. At this point I can actually go in, we've got the console, I can launch it, and we would actually then start going through and doing our configuration. And here we go. Now we could go through and actually start doing the configurations and the connectors to Active Directory and Config Manager and Ops Manager. But one of the things we need to do is this register with the Service Manager Data Warehouse. And this is important because while the Service Manager database contains information on current work items, for that long-term storage of history and where we actually run reports against are done via the Service Manager Data Warehouse databases. And they're really managed by the Service Manager Data Warehouse server. It basically runs jobs to harvest information from the Service Manager database periodically. So we actually want to get this installed. So I'm actually going to jump over to the Service Manager Data Warehouse. And again, we now need to go through and do an installation on this. Once again, I want to make sure that that Service Manager service account is a local administrator. So again, jump down, groups, administrators, add Service Manager service, check name, oops. Oh, I can't type. Service Manager service. And there. And once again, there are those basically same requirements. We do need to install the .NET framework, but we don't need to do the other IIS changes we made. So .NET install. So we're going to launch the setup again, but this time we're going to select that data warehouse option. I've read the license terms thoroughly. Yep. Again, it's saying this authorization manager hotfix is not installed. Again, we can try and run it, but this box, as you can also see, is running SP1. So I suspect it's going to give me that same error. That it's not required. Yep. So again, we'll ignore that. Memory 8 gigabytes. It's probably not going to get that much. One of the things I will say, if this is a lab environment, one of the things you can do is you don't have to have the data warehouse running all the time. You could actually just start this up maybe once a day or when you want to run reports, because again, the data warehouse server is the guy that's going and harvesting data from the main database and sort of getting it in the right format for long-term storage. So this doesn't have to be up and running all the time. So yes, it needs more memory, but it doesn't have to be there all the time. Now in production, obviously, you're going to leave it there all the time. But for testing purposes, feel free to not have it going all the time. And we can even run the reports directly through reporting services, so we don't even have to start this every time we want to run a report. So it's asking me for the database server for each. Again, it's giving me that same error about the collation. I want to create a new database. It's going to use that same one for the repository, for the data mart. Again, this is my lab environment. I'm just putting them all on the same one. Create a new database. So we actually create 3 databases on the data warehouse. So you have a staging repository and that data mart doing slightly different things. Again, customize this to whatever works best for how you separate your data and your log files. So I need to give it management group name, so I'm actually just going to have the one. I'll call it the same. My administrators are once again the same as for my normal management server. So this is actually where are the reports going to run from. So my SQL Services reporting server is my SQL Server database. I have reporting services installed on that same box. You may separate it out. And again, remember, see this? I have taken the manual steps to configure SQL reporting services as described. That was copying that file over and editing that config file. So I'm going to say, yes, I've done that. What is the service account? Then what is the reporting account? Nope. Yes. And off we go and install the data warehouse management server, and we'll let that run. Again, once the installation is complete, we can run the encryption for these set of databases. And we're done. So now we've actually got a data warehouse and we have our management server. We can actually go and register that data warehouse server with our service manager. Server's good. And we now have our connection to the data warehouse. So it says now popping up. It's going to go through. Oh, didn't mean to do that. So now we can actually go through and do more of our configuration. For example, we might want the end user self-service portal. So again, we run the setup, install the web portal. It actually installs 2. There's an end user portal for the end users, and then there's an analyst portal. which could be used by people in the IT group, but it's also people who maybe need to approve a request. Maybe you have some workflow that a manager has to approve something before it carries on, like purchasing a piece of software or gets installed. So it's somewhere where you can go and manage change requests, really. It's not really for incidents or problem management today. Check's all good, and let's install. So for the certificate, I mean, we can use a self-signed one for here. So we would actually fire up our web server. Oh, okay. So I didn't actually install the management tools, so I can't actually do the management. So what I'm actually going to have to do is either import a certificate. So if you had a certificate or get one from your PKI, you can then import this in and use it. For me, I'm just going to create a self-signed one, but it means I need to add in the management tools. So I'll allow the management framework as well. So now we can actually go in, do the management. Set my server, server certificates, create a self-signed certificate, and now I have a certificate for this IIS server. So now if I go back, set my database, I'm actually just going to run this as that Service Manager service account. Still no. So this is the default self-service portal we get out of the box. Actually, the next thing I will do is I'm actually going to download and install the new version. So Microsoft actually released the source code to the self-service portal to enable you to actually do your own customizations and configurations, and that includes sort of a compiled version, and it actually has a different look and feel. So what we'll do is we'll see this, but then we'll install the newer one. Install's complete. I'm actually not going to bother with this. It's the same database, and it's showing me my two portals, the end user and the analyst. Close. So I mean, they're the main parts of Service Manager actually up and running. We have the end user portal, we have the management server, and we have the data warehouse server. So we'll turn off because it's annoying. And we'll do that again. So the download's finished. What we'll actually do is open this up, and there's all the source code, but we actually want that to give us a pre-ready example. All I'm going to do is take these 3 folders and overwrite any duplicates. So this should actually give us the brand new portal. Also, we would hope. Now there is actually one other thing I need to do. Because we've now got the website, there's one additional role service we need, and that's actually static content. Otherwise the site won't actually render correctly. So I'm just going to install that as well. So now we have static content. Let's launch our web browser. I already pre-populated links to sort of my internal services. I've added the end user one in here already. So I can just click it. Now, because it's the first time it's running, it's taking a little bit longer. But it will be faster on subsequent connections. Also, you notice I'm not being prompted for credentials because I've got this as part of anything that's star.saviltech.net or for HTTP or HTTPS. It's just part of my intranet zone, so it just passes credentials through. And there we have our self-service portal. It's got the data available, and we're good to go. Finally, what we're actually going to do is just a couple of connectors. So the first thing I want to do is connect up to Active Directory. It's actually very easy to do. We just go into that Create Connector, Active Directory. We're going to specify a name for this connector. So just for example, the name of our domain. We can put a description. Notice I've got enabled for the connector. I can specify my current domain, or I can specify another domain or even an organizational unit. I specify the account I'm connecting as. So in this point, the operational account, which is that service account we created. I test that connection, all looks good. I can now actually go ahead and select which specific objects I actually want to do. So in this example, I'm actually going to say all the computers, users, user groups, but I could, if I wanted, actually select specific ones. Shows me a summary, go ahead and create it. And that's going to run at a periodic interval once it's actually created. And I can go and actually see when it's going to run once it's created via its properties. And once I've actually done this, I can go ahead and schedule a manual execution to actually go ahead and run now. So we'll actually close this. Now it's successful. Select it. And synchronize now. That's going to go ahead and run in the background. If we wanted to track it, we could select it, do start time, and it would show us when it started and its current progress. Now I'm actually going to do quickly connect to email. So we have a basic SMTP capability built in, or there is a separate Exchange connector. So for now, I'm just going to do a basic SMTP out so I can send out email. I'm typing in the name of my Exchange server. I created an email account for my workflow account because that's what's going to be used when we use this Windows integrated, the workflow account. So make sure that has permissions to send email. The reply email address has to match the name of that workflow account, and I now have basically email capability to send outbound. Now, I do actually now need to go and enable email as part of my connections, my workflows, etc. to get that, but it's now there and ready. So at this point I have a working Service Manager installation, and what we'll do in subsequent videos is actually go and test out the functionality, go and set up connections to Configuration Manager, etc.